Good evening and welcome to DSU's big title match against SDSU. The only two, I believe, undefeated teams left in this year's or this season's League of Legends tournament. So I'm pretty excited to see DSU finish up their streak strong with a win tonight. But it's going to be tough competition, considering that we're up against the only remaining undefeated team left in the league. So I am expecting probably 3 games, or maybe just 2 pretty close ones. But we'll see. It could come down to anything, really. I'm sure everyone watching the stream has a lot of faith in our guys, as do I. As for expectations for tonight, DSU is known to play fairly by the books and on the meta. So I'm expecting Maokai, the big bottom combos like Lucian Nami, Caitlyn Lux, contested middle lane picks like Kassadin, possibly Aurelion Sol, just those strong Rod of Ages users. And we are getting into draft here. Hopefully it'll be up on stream in just a second here. But until then, I'm seeing quite a bit of fuss around this match. I saw the guys in the room to give you a little behind-the-scenes sneak peek, and they were looking pretty focused. So they're going to take this one pretty seriously, I hope. As for picks that I'm personally excited to see from DSU, Heimerdinger, a staple for Brujah, our support. Super strong pick from him. It was one of his most common picks so far throughout the league, but it has started to be banned. So we could definitely see that come about. Here we have the draft. And just as I was talking about earlier, Heimerdinger has been banned off of the pick. And skipping past the bans, DSU comes out with a Thresh first pick. Something I haven't seen before in the league here, or at least from DSU, is Thresh. So I'm pretty surprised there. Thresh brings a lot of stats and a lot of CC to the team. So I'm not surprised to see him, but I'm surprised to see him from DSU. But Thresh is one of the more mechanically intensive supports in the game, just with his hook and his flay, and the way you can make those super impressive clip plays with the lantern. So I'm excited to see what Brujah can do with it. SDSU retaliating with an Udyr, which is another one of the very strong junglers, very tanky, a lot of CC, and brings just enough damage when he builds that Azakanda's Gaze. And he's partnered up with Morgana, another CC-heavy support, very safe against Thresh with her Black Shield, making her carry immune to the pull. So I do like that as a pick against Thresh. I think that's smart. As for the Udyr, I think it's just always a good idea to get him on your team. Just with how he is right now as a champion. Less prevalent than he was when his rework first came out, but still up there on the power charts. DSU pulls out the Volibear. That could be flexed top or jungle, so I like it here. Super flexible. I think Volibear is very strong against Udyr in the jungle, but if they show their hand on the top lane, you could definitely put it up there as well if it's needed. And Sivir. I like Sivir against the super deadly one-hit abilities in the bottom lane, like Morgana. If her Dark Binding hits you, you're going to be standing still for a super long time, and being able to put up a nope shield to that and even get a little bit of health as a reward is super good. And we see Gangplank come out for SDSU. A very strong champion right now. A lot of one-shots with the barrels and pretty mechanically intensive, so it should be fun to watch. Let me take a look up there at the top lane. And we're back into the ban phase with Ornn. Ornn always provides strong value in the late game with his upgraded items. So I think that's an efficient ban. Caitlyn coming out as a ban for DSU. Maybe it's a comfort pick for SDSU's ADC. but she is fairly strong right now. So either way, it's very good. Aurelian Soul comes out as a ban. Aurelian Soul has been super prevalent. All eyes are on him ever since his rework has come out. And with his consistent damage and powerful CC and execute, I think it's a good ban to be careful about. DSU finishing up the ban phase with Varus. Varus synergizes very well with Morgana with his Chain of Corruption. So I think maybe not the strongest ADC. That would be Caitlyn, who we already saw banned. So super smart draft here so far from DSU. I like it. And we see SDSU respond to the Sivir pick with Jinx. Jinx is another champion that can work around Morgana's root very well with her Chomper traps. But I think that's not as efficient a pick as SDSU would like, which is the pressure that has come on from the Caitlyn and Varus bans that DSU put a heavy focus on in this second half of the ban phase. We see DSU come up with Sejuani as their pick, still not knowing who's top in jungle here, although I would place my bets on Sejuani top. Super strong pick, tanky, with that ranged CC that you don't necessarily have to do that full committal to, making her one of the most versatile champions to work around the big engages or front-to-back fights that you see from Volibear and Sivir. Finishing it off with a Yone mid. Yone is another comfortable and strong pick from Crimson Samurai. But if they decide to shake it up, that's another thing that could be sent top. So DSU really trying to not play their full hand here, keeping it somewhat mysterious. The final pick from SDSU is Cassiopeia. Much needed AP damage in their comp. Cassiopeia being some of the most consistent magic damage dealers in the game. It rounds it out very well. Team comps organize themselves, and it is Sejuani top. Surprisingly, though, it is Cassiopeia top, Gangplank mid. Nope. SDSU just a little bit slow on the swap. That would have been pretty surprising. I would have liked to see it. As for just generally in the team compositions, I would give this one to DSU. I could be wrong. I'm kind of shaky on some of these picks, but I think with the Sivir providing powerful, consistent damage and movement speed to her team, the tankiness of Sejuani, Volibear, and Thresh combined should make their front-to-back extremely powerful. And especially with Sivir Spell Shield, there's not much SDSU can do to get back into their backline, especially when they're dealing with the big damage from Yone as well. Only having 2 big damage carries can lead to some nasty shutdown, though, from Cassiopeia's grounding ability and Morgana's root. So I think it's really up to DSU's frontline to keep that from getting through. Especially when you're looking at Gangplank Barrows. The powerful one-shot threats on the Rift, especially once he gets some crit going, are basically what the late game is played around when Gangplank gets himself strong. As for just generally speaking, though, SDSU brings strength. Cassiopeia brings so much consistent damage. Udyr brings a lot of dive and ability to stay in there, and Gangplank providing just the burstiest of bursts, tank or squishy, no matter what. Morgana may not be able to handle the peel, though, from DSU's comp. If Sejuani, Volibear, or Yone comes down on top of her, Morgana may not be able to just get her away from them, even with her ult and her Q and her spell shield. But a minute and a half left till we get into the game. And another thing I'd like to talk about is the Thresh pick, which I was talking about earlier when it was first picked, but some of the nuances of that lane really come from Thresh's general threat around the map, because Thresh players won't generally build mobility boots. And he has some of the most powerful ganks in the game with his hook, Lantern to bring the laner up, and the massive slow from his E Flay, as well as an exhaust. Not many abilities that actually bring an exhaust, which slows and reduces your damage in the box, his ultimate. So while he is primarily going to position bot lane to help Sacred out, just one good Thresh gank mid could definitely snowball that out of control for SDSU. As for the Volibear pick, something that surprised me, you don't generally see something like that out of DSU, but it does match their rhythm and rhyme with tank junglers like Maokai. But he's more, I guess Volibear brings more damage in Siege, especially with his ultimate being able to shut down towers, and with Sivir's damage and ability to take towers quickly and shove waves in. DSU may just be playing for an endgame or mid-game Rift Herald Siege to just destroy one, maybe two turrets, if they can manage that. Especially with the backup from Sejuani pushing people off with her ultimate. As we're just about to get into game here, I want to restate once again that I am incredibly excited to see this one. Two champions right now in the league going head-to-head. Should be a contentious fight for DSU. As for the start of the game, neither teams have super heavy engage level 1. So besides maybe shooting for a Thresh hook, we might not see an invade, maybe just a standard 5-point from both sides. And we're off. Time to test my theory out. I know for a fact that SDSU won't go for a heavy invade unless they go for a Morgana Q, but against both of these champions, the threat of being 5-stacked on is so heavy that you might not be able to look for anything without facing a loss. DSU does pair up, going down into the bot lane, possibly going to look for something cheesy to get an early game advantage. And SDSU does just look for the 5-point, not letting DSU in at any points, but they're not looking to get into their jungle. They're sitting here in the bot lane bush, possibly waiting for someone to walk up and try and get vision. Doesn't look like it works out, though. Somewhat of a pipe dream from DSU here. It's unlikely that someone from SDSU will manage to lock themselves down there. But if they did, it would have been a very easy first blood. The laners head out to their respective areas. We see Volibear start top lane. So we're maybe seeing some emphasis put on the bot lane here as Volibear looks for his level 3 gank. Udyr starting standard with his blue on the bot lane. So the junglers won't be interacting much in this early game, probably 2 uncontested scuttle crabs. However, they could meet in the mid lane if they both go for level 2s. And that could be a pretty intense way to start this off. That's just speculation from me, though. DSU faking a bot lane leash as well to not give away where their jungler is right at the start of this game. Could give them a good stealth surprise here whenever Volibear does decide to show himself. And it looks like he's going for a level 2 in the top lane. And this could be the death of Gangplank if he doesn't play it well, if he doesn't just give up his flash early, which he does. Might still be caught out. Nope. That's just a heavy health advantage for DSU and definitely helping to be a flash down, especially with Fuyu not bringing flash in to teleport and ignite, which I like to see. An ambitious flash hook from Bruja doesn't quite land. The movement is fairly clean for SDSU's ADC. And the range versus melee, usual in the mid lane. Crimson getting pushed into. We see the push and pull dynamic really start to come off here in the bottom lane. And on the top, it's still just a slugfest. You'll love to see it. Crimson using his incredible champion here. Yone's ability to just go in and get right back out allows him to go for super heavy trades when you wouldn't expect to. Volibear coming in for a repeat gank, using his flash, forcing it out of Cassiopeia. That's pretty big. You like to see that a lot. Cassiopeia's flash being down gives Crimson yet another flash advantage in the mid lane, which is pretty big. Both lanes are now up in terms of mobility, so we could see some plays happen either way here. Bruja fishing for a hook again, trying to find something here, just taking bush prowl. And Sejuani is a little pushed into her tower here. I'm expecting an attempt at a freeze, but the poke has to come through anyway, and that kind of eliminates that possibility. Udyr messing around in Volibear's jungle, looking for camps to take, and he finds the wolves. He looks like he's going to get away with that, with Tenkai's preferring to go for the Scuttle Crab. And it's 1 minute until Dragon spawn, so that vision may come in handy with that up. The Black Shield comes down, even though the hook misses. Could lead to something here with Volibear showing up in the bottom lane. Bruja gets heavily bursted down, and now Jinx has to run for her life, has to use Exhaust there. Tenkai's coming down, not getting any kills, but consistently getting summoner spell advantages for his team. That's how you know it's a good jungler. When they're just coming down, I know I can't get a kill out of this gank, but I know I can help my laner anyway. As Fuyu goes for a level 4 versus level 5 fight, using his Ignite to his advantage, giving him possibly a kill in this fight, just barely not. Gangplank gets away with, what was that, 20 HP? You hate to see it. Bot lane's shoving in as Gangplank has to back. The Thresh hook just barely misses again. SDSU playing very well around it, knowing its cooldown and playing back when it's up. And we see the ADC and support from SDSU recall, giving a crash to Sivir with her powerful wave clear, and probably giving up the dragon. Not much you can do there, as it's uncontested with mid and bot shoving in. So it's looking like it's going to be pretty free for DSU here. An early Mountain Dragon is super powerful, especially for a super tanky team like Sejuani, Volibear, and Thresh. I'd like to see a recall immediately after the dragon goes down to try and reclaim some of the tempo they lost. And Sacred starts early. And the game's paused. Okay. This could go on for any amount of time, probably fairly short. We'll see. Someone just must have come across some technical issues. As for the game state right now, it's just barely a little DSU sided. You see that with Tenkai's coming down, getting summoner spell advantages that last just a little bit longer for both sides. And I really like that. Just coming down to every lane, putting his pressure all over the map before he even hits level 6. Tenkai's really knows what he's doing. Volibear is strong in this early stage, with his passive letting him build up damage on all the enemies that are around him, and his Q letting him get on top and stun you almost immediately. He becomes even more of a threat with his ultimate, but I think especially in this early game, it's especially important to get advantages in lanes. It's super ambitious to go for all three, so I like to see it. It's a nice way to flex DSU's power early on in this match. As for the top lane, that super close fight from Fuyu, heartbreaking as you see Gangplank get away, but you have to keep in mind that that still does secure a huge advantage for him. Even if Gangplank doesn't die, it lets him basically do whatever he wants with the wave. Game is just about to be unpaused. Here we are, as we see DSU's bot lane head back to base. And Fuyu continues to apply the pressure he got from that powerful fight, that great fight for him, and shoving into Gangplank's turret, trying to deprive him of as much gold as possible. But Udyr's here to help out. Does Fuyu see him yet? Wave freeze here. This sometimes happens when you pause custom games. It's just happening. It's just a weird bug that Riot hasn't quite fixed yet. Fuyu finds the gank, and he can't get away quite in time, especially being down a flash with teleport and ignite. And first blood goes to SDSU. Udyr using that advantage to head into Volibear's top side jungle and take his Gromp. Not much you can do about that, but he has to back off, knowing that Cassiopeia is backing and that Yone is not. So, just wasting a bit of his time on that account. DSU's bot side playing very close to their tower, just knowing that if they step away from their wave too much, Morgana can take heavy advantage of that. But the same goes for Jinx against the Thresh hook. I like to see supports like this, where one wrong move from the ADC can end up in them being in a super bad spot. Makes it exciting to watch and frustrating to play, I'll tell you that. As DSU has a slight XP advantage in the bottom lane. That just comes from SDSU recalling back to their base before DSU did. And being up mana, Sacred can just afford to huck Qs out and try and get as much damage as he can before something exciting happens, trying to claim an advantage for when it really counts. As for the game state right now, seeing First Blood go to SDSU is disappointing, but DSU is still comfortable with their Mountain Dragon lead. Hopefully going to try and keep that up with the Ocean Dragon in 3 minutes. And it's possible, but unlikely that we could see a 4v4 or 3v3 for that objective. As we see Crimson take Yone up into Udyr's jungle, trying to look for just something up there. Nothing comes of it though, and he has to head back down. Both junglers in the top side, as the Rift Herald has just spawned, and DSU immediately snatches it up. And with Udyr on his Raptors still, they're not able to react in time to try and contest this. Crimson finds Udyr and goes for something. Ooh, the ult just barely going right between the two. This is when the ult lands, and Yone has to back right off, but taking that health advantage even with the Gangplank ult. Ooh, Udyr walks back up, and yep, he's gonna die for it. That was greedy. And Crimson goes for gold here with the kill on Cassiopeia. She manages to just barely get away though. And Gangplank flashes for the kill. Wow. Does Sejuani manage to get away? Not quite, and this fight goes to SDSU. DSU made a bit of a mistake backing off of the Rift Herald and walking into a Gangplank ult, losing the advantage that they had there. But SDSU played it super well. Tenkai is running away from the Gangplank looking for an escape opportunity. But instead it turns into an engage. He gets the shield and uses it to walk away. I like that, the ambush. It's an ambitious play, but I like it. As Sacred continues to lay down his attempts at poke, you can see it coming through occasionally with the moderate health advantage they have there. And knowing that most of SDSU's pressure is in the top lane, they're okay with just shoving this in, looking for something ambitious like a hook. The black shield and the dodge comes down. And Udyr starts to solo the Rift Herald, gets caught out by 2 members of DSU. Does get the eye, however. Wow. I wouldn't say that's worth for SDSU. Losing their jungler like that, giving up the gold lead that they have, not giving it up, but shortening it considerably, means that the Rift Herald has to be super well played in a lane that's already shoving out in order to make that reclaimable. DSU knows that just as well, so they're going to play like they have to avoid that. Figure Conviction playing into his wave to avoid the Morgana engage. And it just barely skims past Bruja. In the top lane, we see a wave shove in. We're back down here. Fuyu looking at a bit of a health disadvantage, probably going to look to back. And in the bottom lane, vision is cleared for DSU, opening up opportunities for a gank while Volibear is down there, which would almost guarantee this dragon for DSU. Fuyu going for another courageous engage, knowing that there could be a barrel in that bush, but he's willing to risk it. And it works out. DSU trying to keep all of their lanes as shoved in as possible to avoid an effective Rift Herald is what I like to see. Trying to negate the damage that losing that objective will do to them as much as possible. But against a ranged champion like Cassiopeia on a melee champion like Yone, that could be tough for our mid lane. Not knowing where Udyr is, Fuyu has to keep shoving, just in case he goes for something top and trades the dragon. As we see both teams fluctuate towards their bottom side to try and snag this one away from the other. SDSU, looking with a pretty significant power dynamic here, just in terms of XP and items, are going to take the vision, possibly start it. Not quite yet. DSU really not looking to let them have this. But it's going to be tough. Crimson finds himself in a bit of a rough spot. But so does Jinx here, so we could be looking at a 1-for-1. The big 2v2 starts out there as Jinx gets picked off. DSU's bot lane is heading up as the huge Volibear ult comes down, kills Morgana, and the Thresh Lantern just manages to save Crimson out of there. But it's not enough for Volibear. Tank Eyes falls, and being down a jungler the Dragon is in serious peril for SDSU here. Fresh Hook comes down, and we get a pretty great engage with Yone. Udyr is going to manage to find him and kill him one way or another, but he has to recall and it goes to Jinx instead. Cassiopeia finds herself hooked again, but Sacred can't capitalize on it. He's just too low on health. That is unfortunate. As Udyr solo starts the Dragon, finds he's not going to be able to do this. Nope, he's just pulling it out. And that's another objective down for DSU, unless Tenkai's looks for a steal here, which it looks like he's posturing to do. He's spotted by SDSU as members of the team move down to try and force him off of that. If it works, we have to concede this one. Have we seen the Rift Herald come down from Udyr? I don't think we have, unless we missed it in that fight. So that's definitely still pressure for SDSU. Tenkai's going back to his normal clear, as with Udyr, as they try and work out what the next move is, trying to see what lane opens up for an opportunity for either side, as we see the gold lead go in SDSU's direction. It's only about a 2.5, 3,000 difference, so we're definitely still in comeback territory. But Udyr finding himself on the bottom side, engaging on Sacred as it's just a mad dash to get away from him. He's too fast with the Ghost coming down. And even with the Super Mega Death Rocket missing, it's not going to be enough for either member of DSU's bottom lane. The tower can't avenge either member either, as Gangplank finds himself shoved in on the top side, taking plates for himself, and the gold lead almost immediately widens to about 5,000. Which definitely not unwinnable, but it's looking worse and worse for DSU. Plates fall just before SDSU manages to take the bot lane turret, with Jinx's pretty powerful attack speed power with her revved up minigun. Bit of a skirmish here on the top lane between Tenkai's and Durd. He has to flash to get out of it. Gangplank's just too strong right now, even before he's at level 13. The item difference is just a bit too much, with Essence River being down. Crimson engages, knowing that Bruja is nearby with the Thresh. If this hook lands, we could definitely see a kill. Yep, Cassiopeia has to flash in order to not die there, and she immediately starts to recall, just hoping that Crimson can't manage to shove this in. With Bruja's help on the cannon, though, it's not looking good for SDSU on that account. Jinx migrates up to the mid lane, as you'd expect after an ADC takes their turret. Ooh, the Morgana Cube does land, followed up by the Chompers. Can the hook save Crimson? He's not looking for the hook. He's looking to get in there, which is bold, maybe a little brash, as another double kill goes down for SDSU. All of these fights have been super close, but they have almost all gone SDSU's way, which is a little bit unfortunate for us. Udyr starts clearing his top side as Cassiopeia uses her range advantage again over Sejuani to try and get it shoved in. As the second Rift Herald is up, Morgana tries to clear vision around it as Gangplank pushes in the bottom lane to try and draw pressure. He succeeds. DSU is going to try and collapse on this. But the damage is just too much. That guy has to die there, just on a matter of positioning. With the Lantern bringing Crimson in, he immediately takes a barrel to the face. That's the kind of damage Gangplank can bring down, just so consistently, but so bursty as well. And with all that pressure that he drew down there, the Rift Herald comes out to be free, and it's going to take down this mid lane tower. Crimson engages once again, but he finds that the damage is just too much and has to take his route back. Trying to just get a hit on the eye on the back of that Rift Herald, trying to ensure that it doesn't hit your second tier. It's hard though with how much pressure SDSU has. It's not Sacred's not going to manage to do it. He has to take the Lantern out. Ooh, SDSU's burst is just too much. He can't manage it, and that's another unfortunate death for DSU. Fresh Hook lands. Can we capitalize on it? Sejuani also comes down, but Cassiopeia ult comes off to peel. We see the third charge come out from this Rift Herald. Cassiopeia claims a kill on Bruja for herself. And the power from SDSU here is just too much, with the gold lead reaching just over 10,000. Crimson goes for an engage. Ooh. SDSU manages to dodge his ult. He has to back off. Fuyu manages to get out, having just under 10% HP. And SDSU finally ends their monstrous siege on DSU's mid lane here and just settles for their camps instead. And this game is looking fairly rough for DSU. On a more positive note, objective bounties are up, and with the top lane pushing in, we could see something come down there. And with Cloud Dragon just having spawned, SDSU is going to rush it, immediately start it. Probably playing to force tank guys off of the steal again. As the Morgana Q misses, he has an opportunity to try something here, but he's just too late. And they settle to try and kill Cassiopeia here. She gets the Black Shield, she gets ignited, and she manages to escape. Gangplank exercising his power once again on the top lane. Fuyu weaving between barrels. And the large raptor does go to SDSU again in a small skirmish for gold between the ADCs. Udyr going back to clearing his own camps. DSU going to clear waves and camps to just try and minimize the damage done as much as possible. Looking to make as much gold as they can. Fuyu gets caught by a critted barrel and a crit Q. Wow, that is just so much damage so early on. With Navori Quick Blades, Gangplank essentially becomes a ranged champion. And stuff like that coming down, it just shows how much of a threat he is. With such significant gold, Essence Reaver and Navori Quick Blades, without even a mythic, Gangplank finds himself the strongest person on the Rift right now. Possibly for the rest of this game. Morgana once again goes into clear vision, try and secure DSU's jungle for SDSU. Tank guys having none of it. Goes for his wolves, might get caught out here. Gangplank once again lands a crit barrel over there onto the wolves, takes the two small ones for himself. As Crimson finds himself skirmishing once again in the bottom lane, takes a Cassiopeia ult and has to back off. Elwar Bruja is here, and the hook lands this time. Gangplank ult comes down to try and help her out, but it might not be enough. The consistent damage from both of them takes Crimson down super low, but a clean flash onto Cassiopeia gets him out and gets him the shutdown. That's huge for DSU, especially if Fuyu manages to make it out of her alive. The flash from Gangplank isn't enough. He's stunned under turret, but he's too tanky, and he just barely manages to get out as Tank Eyes falls. And SDSU looks for the Baron Nashor. Looks like it's going to be uncontested, especially with DSU's jungler down. And the consistent damage and tankiness from just Udyr and Jinx alone are enough to shred through this thing. And especially if SDSU can manage to get that middle or top inhibitor down, DSU would be in an ugly spot with Nashor enhanced super minions. SDSU, again posturing to put most of their pressure on the top side, following Udyr through the map. DSU puts more effort in the bottom side of their map, as that's just where they feel the gold at this moment. With most players on both teams playing this fairly passively, they're just looking for an opportunity to show up, because both teams have strong 5v5 potential. One person being in the wrong position could lead to their death, like Tank Eyes catching out Cassiopeia here. Yone quick on the follow-up, but they find themselves completely ambushed by SDSU in a fog of war ambush set up by them. Very clever, using Cassiopeia as bait, and it works out for them. SDSU finds themselves in another rough spot with two of their strongest characters at the moment down. SDSU widening the gold lead to almost exactly 14,000. They're looking to take DSU's inhibitor here, Sivir trying to pepper Udyr as much as she can as Fuyu tries to defend his turret, but the gangplank damage is just too mighty. And SDSU finds themselves sieging once again, without a Rift Herald this time, but still with enough power over DSU at this moment to almost uncontested take that inhibitor for themselves, as well as the one in the bottom lane. They look to end, at least to take the Nexus turrets here. DSU raging here, raging against their strength, trying to pull this back to them. The Jinx ult flies by as consistent damage comes down from DSU. The Gangplank ult comes down as well as Udyr engages, finds himself hooked and pulled towards the turret, but his healing is way too much. Wow. And the game ends. GG, well played to SDSU on that first game. Very strong performance from them. And fairly strong performance from DSU on that one. You see their ability to play from behind, not giving up anything they don't have to against even a team as strong as SDSU. Kind of a heart-wrenching game for us, I can't lie. But I was expecting 3 games, so hopefully I'll be right on that, and DSU can take the next 2. We've seen them lose game 1 before, and as they're still undefeated, you know what that means. DSU may rethink their draft here, look for some other ways to play the game. Maybe with a more committed comp. Crimson Samurai finding himself struggling with that, with his team's inability to keep up with his heavy engage. Or a more passive style, focusing more on Sacred Convictions, Sivir-styled pick. The disparities between some of the champions here played less to their strengths than I originally presumed they would. Looking at game 2, though, I assume SDSU's bans will stay the same. They didn't find themselves particularly challenged by anything on DSU's team that game, so the same things will probably come out. Maybe they'll prioritize picking their bottom lane at the same time, seeing that both of Morgana's strongest synergy supports came down in the ban phase, leaving their bottom lane one of the weaker parts of their comp throughout that match. I am expecting a Gangplank ban from DSU, or possibly a pick, as I know it's a champion that Fuyu finds himself comfortable on from time to time. But more likely it'll be a ban. As for the middle lane, Cassiopeia posed a threat that game, definitely, but a ban on that champion would startle me. I just don't see it being the major component of SDSU's strength in that match. That mostly came from Udyr and Gangplank, 2 of the strongest champions right now, ever since Udyr got reworked and Gangplank got some of his buffs last season. Both of those champions either being banned or first picked from DSU wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. DSU tested the waters with game 1 just a little bit too much, I think. They were playing very flexible around the map, but I think they might get a little more serious, focus more of their power on one champion, try and create a superstar to pave the way to game 2, to a W in game 2 for them. But with SDSU's strong performance, it's going to be a contested pick for them. So we could very easily see this go either way, with DSU getting more careful, getting more serious, and SDSU once again using the strength that they showed off in that first match. As for other things that I expect in this draft, again with SDSU prioritizing the bottom lane picks, I'm expecting another first pick on the jungle, either Udyr, Maokai, maybe Sejuani or Zac, just any of those super tanky engage picks that you see right now in the jungle in most competitive games. We're out of the assassin and bruiser phase of season 11 and 10 and into tank meta with Radiant Virtue, and earlier in this season, Jack Show the Protean showing off how strong they can make certain champions. We should be getting into draft fairly shortly here, as I expect, again, to see an Udyr, Gangplank, or both banned from DSU, and a lot more priority placed on one lane. Especially, I'm expecting to see a hyper carry come out at some point here, but I could be wrong, as DSU focuses again on a more team-focused play, with Tank Eyes preferring to spread his pressure throughout the map, which you saw work out for DSU in the early game. I think most of the blunders came from mid-game, or late early game, or early mid-game skirmishes come through for SDSU, which they knew how to snowball in the perfect direction for themselves and take game one for themselves. We just get into draft here. We'll try and let you in on it as soon as we can. So DSU, again, reeling from their loss in game one, should look to switch things up, obviously, as this didn't work. SDSU, feeling fairly comfortable coming out with another Annie-ban. Super strong mid laner right now. You wouldn't expect it with Annie being not as prevalent in the last forever in competitive play, but some of her recent buffs have made her insane. DSU immediately bans Gangplank, just as expected, saying, nope, not happy with how that one went, and they see why. SDSU will respond to that, probably with another repeat ban in Xayah. Yep. Again, usually the bans will stay the same. They're pretty discussed among the team. So the only time they'll change is when something significant comes out from the enemy team, like that Gangplank or Udyr, which we see DSU ban. SDSU takes out Brujah's Heimerdinger once again. Perhaps these consistent Heimerdinger bans were caused by a leak in information caused by one of our very interviews. Who knows, though? I can't confirm or deny that. Jinx comes out as a ban from DSU here, which I like. It was one of SDSU's picks in the last game, and it synergized very well with how SDSU played, especially with their Chomper Traps and Death Rocket supporting any engage far or close to Jinx. SDSU, in their first ban phase, exclusively bans picks from game one. Wukong comes out as a first pick for SDSU. Surprising. You don't see that a lot around these parts in this season. DSU responds with Jarvan. I think that's smart because with the Cataclysm from Jarvan trapping Wukong in a cage, he can't exercise on his Cyclone as well as he want to. Even with his dash going through walls, it's just a matter of who shows their hand first. DSU making their second pick, Nautilus. Wow. Nautilus is another tanky engaged support, maybe more consistent than Thresh with just the faster hooks and auto-targeting ultimate, which is smart from DSU. They were finding themselves having a hard time getting onto SDSU's ADC, so a guaranteed knockup like Nautilus has is a good way to guarantee that doesn't come down. SDSU takes out Morgana again, another pick from last game that we saw be very effective. Very, very clean Dark Bindings from SDSU, taking out several members of DSU at different points in time. Again, just not being able to move for so long, that route is so ridiculously long that it's so threatening at all points in the game. Zeri follows up with Morgana, which I am honestly personally surprised by. I don't think of many synergies between those two champions, besides Zeri's movement speed allowing her to position perfectly when Morgana does get her CC chains off. Cho'Gath coming down as a ban from DSU. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Cho'Gath was not banned last game, so maybe it's just a thought process seeing their composition here. And the first ban comes down as not from last game for DSU. So it seems they've identified all of the major threats from SDSU's last game and have struck those out. SDSU bans Kai'Sa, one of the stronger ADCs right now, and a fairly good counter to Zeri, just being able to match her mobility no matter what with Killer Instinct, being able to just position her anywhere around Zeri. And DSU's last ban comes out as Jax, which I think is smart. Jax finds himself in a strong spot in the meta right now. He's always been strong, especially even more so now with his rework increasing his strength. Against a caster like Aurelion Sol with the consistent ability damage, maybe Counter-Strike wouldn't be as big of a deal, but would still hard counter DSU's attack damage carry, whoever they decide that to be. Ornn ban coming down, same as last game from SDSU. I explained that earlier, but Ornn always provides heavy gold value with upgrading each member of his team's mythic items by level 18, and it's just such, I think it's around like 3,000 or 4,000 gold value just in total. Wow, I like this from DSU coming out with the Tristana pick, especially with Jarvan and Nautilus being able to get right on top of somebody and engage on them super hard. Tristana getting in there and dealing her damage is exactly what she specializes in, and Nautilus and Jarvan will allow her to do that perfectly. SDSU comes out with a Victor pick, which I like for them. It synergizes very well with Morgana, with him being able to put down his gravity field and stunning anyone hit by a Morgana Q, almost guaranteed, which leaves easy follow-up for Zeri and Wukong. And is SDSU really going to pick Bard here? I'm excited to see it. Nope. And they pivot onto Gragas. Probably in the jungle, possibly in the top lane once again. Gragas brings a lot more AP damage than AD, so you see the pressure put onto Wukong and Zeri to really come out into their own here. So, with them being so easy to shut down champions, especially in a dive comp like DSU is showing here, can be very scary. With tanks like Jarvan, Nautilus, and Shen being unkillable if the only damage the enemy team has is one type, being able to just build a resistance into that. So I think DSU should really focus on shutting down Zeri and Wukong individually, which will be rough considering that they're fairly easy champions to escape bad scenarios with. Zeri being able to just go over walls and Wukong going invisible and leaving his clone behind. We see Wukong come out into the jungle, actually. Gragas moves up to the top lane against Shen, which I don't know much about that lane, besides Shen's taunt obviously being a lot more efficient against AP champions that don't have high damage auto attacks like Gragas. Tristana and Nautilus bot lane, I think, takes the strength category over Zeri and Morgana, but they definitely get outscaled with Zeri just being one of those late game hyper carries with hyper mobility and strength, but the scaling has been left to Aurelion Sol on DSU's part. Aurelion Sol obviously having his infinite scaling with his Stardust stacks, getting more damaging, bigger, and longer abilities the more he gets, leaving the end game, even though SDSU comes out with picks like Victor and Zeri firmly in DSU's hands, which is a problem they found in Game 1. As the game went later and later, they found themselves at more and more of a disadvantage, possibly taking the Aurelion Sol pick to counter that kind of effect. But it looks like they are once again focusing their power on the early and early mid game with Tristana and the Tristana and Shen combo. Tristana being able to get in there, not having to worry about dying or taking too much damage just because of the massive shield, and re-engage from across the map with Shen's ultimate. It just provides a net of safety for something so divey that you wouldn't expect. So SDSU may make mistakes around level 3 or 4 when Shen hits level 6. It could most certainly happen if the communication is at all subpar. With the Jarvan pick synergizing very well with Nautilus, Shen, and Aurelion Sol, a lot of DSU's team fight pressure comes from the Cataclysm. Being able to just set up that small arena to trap any number of enemies in it's one of the Wombo combo abilities. It just synergizing so well with so many other champions, like the newly reworked Aurelion Sol, or the powerful multi-person CC that can happen with a Nautilus ult. Most teams on DSU are able to also escape a Cataclysm should it come down at them, having a dash that goes over walls. With SDSU's comp, though, I'm fascinated by the Gragas top. Definitely a contender with Shen, being able to, from a range, knock him out of his ultimate channel should he try to do that behind his tower. Also synergizing well with Wukong, Victor, and possibly Morgana, being able to condense everyone up with those other abilities and then spread them out and pick them off individually at the end of the burst, with Mega Casket just dealing so much damage and spreading out basically everyone in every direction. Grog Assault is another one of those big abilities you have to be very careful about. Morgana, also being a champion you have to be very careful about with her, I think at 5 ranks, 4-second root. Tristana has a hard time dodging that, with her dash requiring her to channel it just a little bit, which without perfect reaction times leaves the managing with that ability to just moving out of the way of it. We should be getting into the game very briefly now. Aurelion Sol, again, finds himself in a power position over Victor at this point in time in the meta. So I'm expecting this game, or at least this landing phase, to go towards DSU. We all have high hopes for that, at the very least. Getting into the game here. Talking invades again, you see equal potential on both sides with Nautilus Hook and Morgana Q. SDSU showed an unwillingness to capitalize on Morgana Q earlier, but with them being as grouped up as they are right now, both teams being as grouped up as they are right now, it's possible that we could see some big level 1 fight.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
As SDSU chooses to charge down the mid lane, DSU chooses the top lane. Spreading out towards the bottom side of the map, it's unlikely that we'll see a big clash here. And SDSU chooses to wait patiently in the middle river bush. DSU as a group going out, scouting their jungle, making sure no one's there to have any plots against them. But they're not going to manage to find anyone from SDSU on this side of the map.
Minions have spawned.
Likely about to be spotted here by SDSU. And now it's up to them what they're going to do about it. They're going to back off, choose to rotate into DSU's red side jungle. Or, sorry, into their own red side jungle. I'm sorry, I got mixed up from the last games. As we see Wukong start with his bottom buff, and Jarvan goes for a solo clear on his own red buff. Again, leaving it completely mysterious as to where he started. Both junglers on even pace. We might see another level 2 gank come down from Tankai's, trying to claim the flash advantage once again. It's a consistent strategy, and he's picked junglers that are good at that. Jarvan even more excels even more so than Volibear here, as Gragas walks himself a little bit too far up, finding himself engaged on, and the knockup does land. He has to flash once again, and he loses even more health than he did in game 1. That's a huge advantage for Fuyu, who, as we all know, has the skill to play and pressure around having that health advantage. Level 2 goes to DSU in the bottom lane, as it does in the top lane for Fuyu. And with Gragas being down a flash and only level 1 here, Fuyu has to flash to catch up to him, but yep, the kill's gonna go. First blood goes to DSU for Shen. Shen is a good champion to have first blood on, with his ultimate being able to exercise that gold lead anywhere on the map once he hits level 6. So that's even better than getting it on the jungler, who can exercise their power across the map less efficiently but more consistently than Shen. Gragas has to teleport up using another important summoner spell, as Crimson finds himself at a health and mana disadvantage, but with a shoving wave. SDSU finds themselves pushed back by the pressure of Nautilus in the bottom lane, allowing Sacred to get a shove on. And another pause comes for, I actually don't know who paused the game here, but that's another pause in the early game. Oh, and it almost immediately ends. We'll see if the same freeze happens. Yes, it does. A strange bug. I'd like to see that fixed at least sometime soon. Makes my job harder as a caster. We should be seeing it come to. We should be seeing time unstop pretty soon here. But I'd like to take this brief moment to talk about the state of the game for DSU having just a slight advantage here. In almost every lane, Takis finds himself in the bottom lane, but on vision, so he's unable to do much here, besides just secure vision. Fuyu once again just telling Gragas that no, I own this lane now. You messed up. But Wukong's up there to try and change that, but first he has to get the Scuttle Crab. And he goes for an invade into DSU's red side, but there's not many camps for him to take there. As for the bottom lane, Bruja finds himself taking Bush Prio, a strategy that he likes to exercise in the early game on these hook champions. But he finds himself contested in that matter as Tankais finds himself in the DC without her support, engaged on, but just not enough burst yet, especially through that exhaust to take either member of SDSU down. Zeri goes for a fairly strange engage onto Jarvan there. There's no way she can get the kill, and she's down a lot of mana. So that definitely could have resulted in something if the DSU were a bit closer. Fuyu shoving in the top lane once again, as the health advantage here, the health disparity between the ADCs and the supports allow DSU to take the lane for themselves once again, and just the massive strength gap in the top lane forces Gragas to either give up health or gold on the minions, as the full bush advantage goes to DSU. Bruja being very patient with his hook this game, not giving up any pressure that he had with that cooldown earlier, which is an improvement that I like. He was a bit too liberal with his thresh hooks in the last game, just throwing them out whenever he saw a small opportunity, but now he's maintaining the pressure that Nautilus hook gives him. Even if he doesn't hold it as long as possible, just knowing that he has it up forces Zeri back. Even if the Black Shield is up as a potential countermeasure, it's just not a guarantee. Gragas almost being completely out of mana here, finds himself in a tough spot knowing Tankais is close. It's possible a dive could happen, but Wukong is there in his own top side to try and prevent that from happening. But that leaves all of SDSU's pressure vacant in the bottom lane against a champion as Divey as Tristana that could end up in catastrophe. Tankais pulls the wave, doesn't find the Wukong on top of him until it's a little bit too late, and gets taken out. Yep, just not knowing where Wukong is leads to an extended kind of threat like that, leaving him too exposed. And knowing that Wukong is somewhere nearby, or possibly somewhere nearby, Crimson has to give up those minions there, has to back off Victor. Especially when Victor bluffs, posturing up like his jungler is there ready to reinforce. As Fuyu teleports to try and catch as many waves as he can, not miss too much gold. Before teleport evolves, before it enhances itself to what it once was, it's generally you see top laners using it just to get back to lane. As Wukong goes for an invade, not taking the red, just looking for an opportunity to get an assassination out. But he loses his patience, does go for it as Tankais begins to appear, but he walks through vision. Finds it. With a ward like that, you'd expect it's possible that they're on my red buff, but he can't walk up too much, so he just has to settle for his Raptors here, as Victor doesn't even let him have that. Crimson unable to respond with the wave state in the mid lane. Tankais has to smite, and he goes in on Victor, possibly a little prematurely, as the Chenault comes down, as well as the Aurelion Soul ultimate. Not enough. Jarvan does go down as we see two flashes come up from SDSU. They're on low health. It's a manhunt here as they spread out to try and minimize the losses. Victor takes the blast plant over and immediately starts to teleport out. And he gets to his mid lane turret, losing his flash and teleport here. Very unfortunate that they managed to both get out there. At whatever cost it was to them, it's still more worth for SDSU. Especially as their bot lane is pushing in here I'm surprised to see that against Tristana, who, with the passive effect for E, has trouble not pushing. Fuyu still has the power firmly in his hands in the top lane, and he's acting like it for sure. As we see a quick dive come down here from Sacred. Bruja holds his hook as long as humanly possible to try and force something out of Morgana, and it does come out. Zeri using her ultimate to lay down that consistent, fast damage as Bruja finds her, but his team is just too low health to go in on her and capitalize on it. It's too late, and DSU has to back off, losing yet another kill as the gold lead for SDSU gets up to about 2,000. Sacred stays, which could prove to be fatal if he doesn't manage to play this perfectly, but he does ult. Wow. A great play from Sacred Conviction, using Tristana ult to knock Zeri back into his turret almost immediately after it begins to target her, getting the big damage down that he can't put out at such low health. Crimson using Aurelion Soul's Ease Execute to farm minions under turret, as DSU finds themselves starting to grapple back into this game with plays like that. We could see a bit of a skirmish start here in the top lane with Tankai's being so low on his Raptors. Gragas knowing where he is, he goes in. Tankais has to back off and give up 2 small Krugs to Gragas. And with Fuyu being occupied with the minions there, there's just not much he can do about that. More vision contesting in the bottom lane. Not too much exciting going on there besides just the waves ebbing and flowing. In the mid lane, we see Bruja show up, go for a gank. The hook flies past, but the CC is still just a little bit too much with Aurelion Sol pulling the rooted Victor back into it. Morgana shows up as reinforcements to back off, and Bruja has to use his hook to get out. As Zeri finds the lottery of 2 control wards in 1 bush. That's 60 gold for her that she wasn't expecting to get there. Gragas posturing up, even at that health disadvantage, as we see the first time either of these teams has even looked in the dragon's direction as they grab the Scuttle Crab and start the dragon, exercising the advantage that they have in this game right now, try and secure themselves a stronger late game, which you see already in champions like Zeri and Victor. DSU finds themselves in a tough spot this one. As the dragon goes to SDSU, they again look to invade Tankai's jungle. He's finding himself having a hard time even getting any camps for himself here. But he's patient. He knows that he has to back off, and he does so without making a fuss. As almost all of DSU finds themselves pushed back in the map. Wukong is here in the mid lane to drop the Rift Herald. Crimson not happy about it. Trying to burn through Wukong's health bar as fast as he can. The Rift Herald does manage to go down, even though they land a hit on the eye. It's just barely gonna come down. As Crimson has to settle for just reaching over for farm where he can, knowing Wukong's so close. The Morgana Q lands, but so does the Nautilus hook. The heavy burst from Zeri brings Sacred down to about 1/3 HP and leaves Bruja for dead. Can he get out with the shield? Just not barely. The Cataclysm comes down from Jarvan onto Wukong and Zeri, but they find themselves wiped in the bottom lane. And that gives 3 kills and likely some plates to SDSU, finding themselves in a tough spot as a skirmish breaks out in the top lane. And Gragas gets the kill up there. DSU finding themselves in a tough spot as the gold lead reaches just over 5,000 in the favor of SDSU. Crimson manages to escape by the skin of his teeth. He's content to just sit there and farm up his Stardust stacks, knowing that with the way this game is going, the late game is going to be in his hands. It could be a mistake from Victor to push this wave in with Tankai's and Bruja showing up push him off of it, but he does with the power of the Death Ray. The Death Laser managed to get the wave almost completely called down. as Fuyu and Dirt find themselves fighting once again in the top lane. This one's been exciting. Just a big rivalry from the two of them. Fuyu tries to position himself in front so Gragas can't eat out, but his movement speed is just too much, having the upgraded boots over Fuyu. Tenkai is desperately searching for just any opportunity across the map, but they're just so careful about it now. No, you know, that's the effect that you have seeing him land all 3 lane ganks, level 2, 3, and 4 in the early game. SDSU playing around Tenkai is respecting his authority at all moments. Just knowing that his playstyle now is to look for those ganks whenever he can, and taking his camps, putting him in an extremely rough spot, getting him down 2 levels on Wukong. Gragas and Wukong find themselves fighting Shen up here in the top lane as Fuyu finds himself in a tough spot, taking the Cyclone, looking for an escape, but there is no escape. The Monkey and the Fat Man taken down. An enhanced Aurelian Soul ultimate comes down, damaging almost every member of SDSU's team. As Zeri once again migrates herself up to the mid lane to capitalize on the farm there now that she's taken down DSU's bottom lane tower. Gragas finds himself trying to do the same here with his own first tier. Crimson fiercely defending his own as he takes his Zeri W. Looks like he's about to have to back off here. As Circuit engages on Victor here, doesn't quite manage to get the kill even with an almost fully charged bomb. And Gragas is going to find the turret here. Just barely squeaking out even more of a gold lead out from DSU's nose as we reach an almost 10,000 gold lead once again. Teleport comes down to try and minimize the damage here, even though 4 members of SDSU are here. Crimson isn't just going to let them get this turret for free, but the second Rift Herald of this game has something to say about that. Wukong tries to find a flank, but he has to recall, just knowing that it's not quite going to work out. And Zeri has to E right back over the wall to get out. They're content with just taking the second tier. They don't need some fancy hyper siege like they had in the first game. They know that this game, at the moment, is in their favor. So they're content to just play normal League of Legends, slow and normal as you'd expect from any team. DSU probably going to get a little bit less conventional here, just searching for any mystery formula that'll bring them back into this game. Crimson finds himself mildly caught out here by 2 members. Gragas E flashes to come down on top of him, but with Bruja there to back it up, the Gragas ult is still enough as Bruja has to flash to get out and hook through the wall, and he still finds his life in contest, and he loses it. And that's another kill for SDSU, and the first one onto Victor. The 2 key players on SDSU right here, as you can see on the scoreboard, would be Zeri and Wukong, the 2 attack damage carries, as I was talking about earlier. SDSU putting a big emphasis on making sure those 2 are strong as they find reliable AP damage in Victor, Gragas, and a little bit Ghana. Victor pushing himself up into the inhibitor turret, threatening to take it. Bruja lands a hook, but the Black Shield makes sure it's not too effective. The tank guys coming in on top, getting a 2-man Cataclysm, having to flash out to survive. Wukong flashes to follow and takes him out. Finds himself in a tough spot as Sacred has to W out, and Bruja finds himself once again dying for his ADC's sake. And we're back to the good old top lane, where these 2 just have a constant battle going on between them. As Crimson, again, has to defend his own mid lane turret as fiercely as he possibly can. As he takes a bit of an ambitious fly-in on Morgana, takes quite a bit of damage for it, but takes out a significant chunk of Morgana's health bar for himself, catching another wave in his mid turret. Fuyu goes for another skirmish, gets a couple tower shots down. You like to see it on the tanky Gragas. He can heal it up if we leave him alone for an extended period of time, but getting that short-term pressure is still great for DSU. Wukong trying to get the recall off, but he finds himself caught. Manages to, Mr. President, get down himself with his own clone, taking the Nautilus hook for him. As Sacred finds himself catching just as much farm as he can in the bottom lane. Bruja and Tenkai is still wandering the map, looking for any catch they can. Just fishing for someone squishy and worth a lot of gold on SDSU to find themselves just barely too far up. DSU has begun to play very safe. They're not going for anything ambitious, as they don't have to. With neither objective up at the moment, they don't have any pressure to go for anything. Tenkai's looking to get a jungle camp for himself, possibly for the first time in this game. He can just take his Gromp in peace. Not the case in DSU's topside jungle, where SDSU takes just about every piece of it they can for themselves, except for the Krugs up there. Bruja takes a Morgana Q and a subsequent Zeri W. And SDSU, with all of those wards and control wards, managed to effectively make this their jungle now. Tenkai finds himself tanking another Morgana Q. In an unfortunate position, forces Zeri's flash out of her to kill him, though. It's a common theme so far with SDSU chasing with their flashes, just trying to get as close as possible. DSU trying to stay as far away as possible as they catch up, knowing that if they can manage to squeak through this heavily disadvantageous game, that Crimson with his skill and Stardust can pull them through it. Bruja gonna go down to Victor's Storm here. He's by himself though, even with Gragas having to TP farther away from him. Baron is going to go once again to SDSU. And they find themselves in an even worse spot than before, as the gold lead gets up to about 14,000. Baron Nashor infused Siege coming up on basically all of the turrets on DSU's side of the map. But they're not just letting it happen. Nope, on every turret there is a member of DSU's team ready to fight as fiercely as they can to keep it. Their topside turret does manage to go down as VU looks for kills here. As another skirmish pops out in the bottom lane. Bruja does manage to take out Victor with his strong engage. And Gragas finds himself alone with taking damage from every member of DSU's bottom side team here. Crimson gets a little bit too ambitious, takes a barrel, and manages to go down as Wukong is here to enforce SDSU's power. And he does so by forcing Sacred Conviction's ultimate out of him and then flashing to get through it anyway, then taking him out. Morgana throws out another Q, not going to land on Fuyu. He's too slick with it. But a siege does come down on DSU's Nexus turrets and they find themselves in a rough spot here. Looking defeat in the eyes. And it's looking not good for them. SDSU doesn't have a wave to take these turrets yet with, but the casters are there. With a teleport making it so that one caster minion will not die until the animation is complete. That means that DSU's Nexus is going to go to SDSU for the second time so far. In a rough 0-2 loss for DSU, and a very strong performance from all sides, especially SDSU on their mid laner, jungler, and ADC. It was impressive games for both sides. You like to see contested games there, even if towards the end they're a little bit one-sided. That's a way to show that just one side is very competent once they get a lead they can work with. But that'll conclude tonight's games as DSU sadly does lose their undefeated streak, moving themselves down to the second best team in this lot. Mildly heartbreaking. You don't like to see it, but I'm sure DSU's varsity team will learn from this experience. They'll understand there's going to be, I'm sure, heavy VOD review of these games as they take a look at their mistakes, what they did right, what they did wrong, and maybe learn from SDSU here. Their team play was super dynamic, being able to work just about anywhere in any scenario. With their team comp being dedicated to doing almost everything well, you didn't see a lot of crippling weaknesses for SDSU here. Well, DSU found themselves a little bit lacking in some departments, especially in that second game, like consistent engage and especially peel and escape. I don't know what else to discuss here besides the compositions of both teams here and how they led to the outcomes of these games. I think the Morgana pick was crucial for SDSU, and that's what you saw, especially in the second part of this game, or the second game of tonight, with her constantly being the beginning part of the equation that led to almost all of SDSU's kills, being that of Morgana landing one of her Qs, one of her dark bindings, and that just leading into a kill. Shortly here, we'll be heading into a post-game interview with a mystery member of DSU's varsity team. We'll find out soon. But until then, we're going to take a short break, and we'll see you again soon.